Hey everyone, good morning. It's good to see everyone's bright and bushy tailed and ready to go. So let's get started with our October meeting. Welcome to you. It's always good to see you guys. We look forward to the updates and to learning what we can about what's left to do, and maybe even talk a little bit of processes. I'm curious about how do we get these big photographs developed, or how do we get them on the wall? It'll be great. So anyway, it's good to see you. Let's go ahead, Rachel, and just jump right in this morning, okay?
Okay.
Let's get started.
Thank you. Thank you all for having us today. We will walk through overall project updates. There's been a lot of movement. Some you've seen, some that's behind the scenes. So we'll walk through some of that. And we've had a great continued evolution on Civics Lab based on the feedback that we had received in subcommittee previously. So we'll walk through that at a high level. We'll talk through our progress on portraits of history. So in the last meeting, we decided on what the stories were going to be. And now we've progressed to visuals, and I want to show you that. And then we'll talk about what's been installed. So as we kick off the project update and talking about what's out there, we first want to acknowledge that you've probably seen some things that maybe don't totally look right. And that's okay because we're still in progress. Nothing has been approved, final punched or anything. So whenever we do installs in large stadiums that we do, there's nobody there yet. And so, when you're painting your house, you do that first coat and like, oh, I don't know if that's right or not. You guys are seeing some of that sausage making behind the scenes that we wouldn't necessarily always want our clients to see. So those things will be corrected. I want to give you full confidence that any letters that you see are crooked will be straightened. Everything is going to be as it should be and on par with quality that this building and this team deserves. So we are very much aware, the core team is very much aware, and those things are in progress. I just wanted to acknowledge that. There are also some other really great, beautiful things that have happened. I think most of you guys saw the statues, and we'll talk about that in a second. But there's lots of activity happening again here and then behind the scenes as well. And some of it is a little messy. We're trying to keep that as clean as we can with DI and all of our partners. So yes, appreciate everybody's patience and this not so pretty process, I think, as we're in installation, and want to thank the entire staff here because we are installing an occupied building. People are having to walk around a lot of ladders and moving around. So please extend our gratitude to everybody here that has to work here every day around what we're doing for an install.
Well, Rachel, that's a good reminder that being around state construction for so long, I mentioned to somebody yesterday that the hardest part of any project is finishing it. Yeah. And there are reasons why there's all these walkthroughs and there's, God forbid, maybe a change order here and there just because, sometimes things get up and you go, well, that's not what we expected, or, we're going to have to straighten the picture or whatever. But I appreciate you guys' effort on that front. And I don't know about the rest of the committee, but coming down the stairs this morning, it was nice to be greeted by the former governor. That was quite the thing. I didn't know for sure exactly where they were going to be placed, but I think it's awesome that the chief is looking off toward the Wind River Mountains, and the former governor is looking right where she should be, headed toward the Capitol. So anyway, I don't know if anybody else had any reactions to that or not. Madam Chairman, it was pretty cool to see.
No, I think the new placement, I think everyone will really elevates both statues.
I got a text last night from a friend who's been around the Capitol a lot and indicated to me that yesterday was a fantastic day and was head over heels at those two statues being more prominently displayed. I think it's terrific. I think it's pretty cool. Representative, you okay with it?
Yes, I will just add the commentary that I think I saw Esther smile this morning. She is light, bright, and just feels like she's in a place to greet us and encourage us each day.
Yeah, it just seems appropriate. And Treasurer Meyer, good morning. We just barely got underway, gentlemen. Good to see you, Representative. It's always good to gather. By the way, as we climb toward the end of everything, I just want to keep reminding everyone how appreciative I am of each one of you spending the time you have to serve on this subcommittee. It's just fun to get to a point where some of the work that we've done all these months is kind of starting to bear some fruit, and I appreciate Rachel's admonition that we need to just know that it's gonna be done well and right, and then the subcommittee's gonna get a walkthrough each time and that kind of thing. But anyway, pretty exciting to see some of this come about. Thanks for giving me a moment. Rachel, take it away, please proceed.
Absolutely.
Well, and Chairman and other members of the subcommittee, you know, this has been a project in development on paper and computer screens for years now. And so now things are starting to show up, and sometimes invariably we're gonna see things that don't look the way they looked on paper or on, you know, colors, on a computer screen, on samples. So, you know, this is kind of normal in this type of environment. So keep the feedback coming. That really helps us, and you know, send it the right way. We'll make those changes and adjustments, and it's gonna be a great finish.
You know, I was thinking last night in my professional job, worked many years at an educational institution up in the center part of the state. And I literally remember that we opened a building one year and we had to redo signage. And you know, it just seems to go with the territory, and it just wasn't working right. And we had to switch gears and do something a little bit different. And so it goes with the territory, but appreciate that. Please proceed,
Yeah,
Rachel.
absolutely. So you will continue to see installers here for the rest of this month and into November for package 1, and a little bit into December as we finish up package 2 install. So like I said, lots of activity. There's just some behind the scenes imagery of all the production that's happening at the DI shop. You'll see some of our team members there that don't love to be on camera, but with some of the panels and the woodwork, and everything's just looking beautiful, and the team's very excited for how it's coming together. These are some in progress images of the statue move yesterday. So there was quite the audience yesterday. I joked that the movers were gonna come in here and watch us work for a little bit. They didn't want to. But it was very interesting to watch it, and I appreciate everybody's feedback on that too, because I agree. I think there's light, they just seem more heroic where they are. And hearing the history, I think that's where they were supposed to be in the beginning. So just happy to see them there, happy to have them there to greet people from each entrance. So we have a bunch of videos too, so if anybody's interested, we're happy to share the videos as well. And then Nigel, if you want to go into PMR progress, I know the co-chair was asking about how the images are created and framed and what that process looks like, if you don't mind hitting on that a little bit.
Sure, absolutely. I just kind of outlined all the different components that we're in process right now. First of all, good morning. I wish I was there. Like the first time Ian and I walked down that hallway and we saw the statues at the end, we both agreed that they needed to be under the natural light, and to see them under that natural light is fantastic. So, I'm thrilled that that's happening. I wish I could be there to see it. So as far as the PMR rooms, all the room signage has been created. The production art is done, and it's now in the hands for fabrication and installation. So those are the signs we looked at our last meeting, or the meeting before that, I can't recall, that names the different basin names for each of those 6 rooms. The images have all been approved and acquired. I think there's one that we're having a little difficulty with, but everything else has been totally acquired. Those are all proofed and color corrected and checked for cropping and then printed, and they're all in production art right now. and going, and some of them have already been printed. So that process is going. The frames and the mats have been and are being fabricated to hold those images. And actually, they may already be all done by now. I don't know, maybe close.
They are getting very, very close.
Very close. The artifact labels are complete. You guys have reviewed them. Everything's set and ready. Those just need a mat to sit under and a frame to inhabit. So those are very close as well. The text templates have already been reviewed once for all the half wall panels in those 6 rooms. So those revisions are in, and we're making those changes. And we're moving towards, next will be the design layout and then your subcommittee review of the graphic panels, just as you did the other graphic panels throughout the building. So those are coming up. There are some questions around color for those panels and how that works through the extension and into the other elements in the extension, like the conference rooms and the amphitheater, the auditorium. And even in the primary hall. So we've developed a color strategy with a couple of different options, but the core team wanted to see what some of the wall graphics looked like and how that was related to that color strategy before we made a final selection on what the colors should be. So that's going to be one of the last steps. And once those wall graphics are up, we'll have a good sense of what that looks like. The wall graphics are we're trying to resolve an issue that creates the best visual possible for the wall graphics. So we're looking at different materials, and I think you might be talking about this today, or I'm not sure about that. But once we get that determined, those will be installed. All the imagery for those wall graphics in the conference room has been photoshopped and touched up and prepared and scaled. It's just a matter of deciding exactly what the best medium is and then getting those produced and installed. I think that kind of covers where we're at. We've got layouts for all the images in the auditorium determined. We have, I think, the majority of those images as well in the auditorium have been acquired, and we're in the point where we're doing some production on that, getting prepared for production on that. We've also made selections, determinations on frames for, you've already seen the frames for the public meeting rooms, but we wanted to have pair them with a couple of different frames from those gallery areas on the ramp in the auditorium. And I think we might have images of those on the next page, but I think that's a pretty overall update on where we are with the PMR progress. Was there anything I missed or any questions?
No, you're so busy.
I have a question, and it's elementary, but I'm just curious. So we obtained the rights to the photographs that were beautiful. What happens at that point, and what kind of material? And I'm looking over at Kevin and others who do this for a living. I just wonder. It's not like we're just buying a canvas print. Right? I mean, these will be produced on material that will last and obviously look great, I'm sure. But I'm just kind of curious what the process is on the big photographs.
Ashley, can you speak to the particular material that we're using for that?
Yeah, of course. For the images in the PMR, they're being printed on a photo paper that is acid-free and will last a very long time. We're also putting it behind a archival glass that protects the image from any kind of fading so it doesn't have the light shine through it. And then obviously the frame itself, which you guys have seen, really gorgeous. I can send through some photos of the production so you guys can see it. I'm not sure that we have those here in this deck, but they are looking really gorgeous.
Yeah, thanks for that. Appreciate it.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm just wondering whether or not we've included every county in this whole project, that every county has a representation somewhere. And the reason for that necessarily is that if a representative wants to see how the money was spent, and they don't have any representation at all after $6-7 million, or $5 or $6 million, whatever it's gonna be. I think, maybe might not have legislative buy-in to a certain extent. And so, I don't know whether or not, you could do an inventory and see where we're at on this.
So Treasurer Meyer, that's an interesting point. I would have to say that I don't think I was concerned about that throughout that whole process.
Yeah.
I was more concerned with a more regional approach to make sure that each of the regions of our state were represented. There's a good chance that maybe all 23 counties are represented, but I just don't know. And we may, that's the kind of thing, Treasurer Meyer, that we may run into. I mean, being on a committee like this,
And if we got,
we're all prepared to.
yeah, and if we got some frames or pictures or photos or something that we couldn't get license on, and you have, 3 or 4 spots or something, then that might go somewhere around the Capitol. It might be good just to look at it and see if we could bring some of these places in, certainly don't have to worry about Teton County.
Yeah. Pretty sure that Teton County is covered. No, very good point made. And I think as we go forward, those are the kind of things that we may run into. Wendy?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Treasurer Meyer, I think that is a incredible point, and we have really appreciated our partnership with the State Museum, has been really sensitive to that, as has the Office of Tourism. So we can go back and look at where each of those images are from and start doing an inventory. But in addition to those images, the half wall panels in each of those rooms that Rachel mentioned will be coming to you for review, or Nigel might have mentioned that. When those come to you for review, those will also include a blow up map of that region and 20 to 25 places of interest. And I've been really impressed between Amy and Nathan and Kevin. They've really tried to make sure, we just had a discussion yesterday that there's some things perhaps in Cheyenne that won't make the list. And people may ask, well, why didn't that make the list? But it may be because we're trying to get chug water in there. And so we won't be able to put everything on those maps. And then your request for an addition of a virtual map out in the main extension, that will allow us to do a lot of different things. We may be able to do county profiles. We may be able to do a lot of different scalable things through that. And then with the hiring of Nathan, and during his interview, he expressed his interest and delight at the idea of using this gallery space, which with the move of Esther and the chief, you can now see the potential for that space as a gallery for both 3D pieces and 2-dimensional pieces. And this goes clear back to the beginning of this project and your interest and the governor's specific interest in making sure fresh content from all around the state is brought there. And Nathan may want to, I don't know if you want to preview some of the things that you're working on, but that's the very idea, is that everyone in the state is represented when they come here.
Yeah. And that's just, I'm just thinking from the political aspect, and I know we haven't really approached that, but I think that, that's, you gotta be cognizant of that.
Yeah, that's good stuff, Treasurer. And Wendy, thanks for that, and really appreciate all of you who have been walking this through and getting it to this point. Nathan, tell us a little bit about that, and welcome. I haven't had the opportunity. I missed last month, and so, welcome aboard, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about what the potential is for this gallery.
Absolutely, Chairman. Yeah, thank you. Thank you all, Treasurer. Very valid point. And I think what I expressed during my interview, and just going back to my background. So I've quick precursor to my getting here. So I've worked in museums across the state for 17 years in various corners. And I'm just really excited about the potential of that Capitol Gallery, collaborating with museum institutions across the state, with art collaboratives across the state, and partnering and creating some really unique exhibits that highlight non-Cheyenne centric history and art from across the state. I think there's incredible opportunities. I've already started some conversations with 2 institutions in the state. very separate sides of the state. They have been overjoyed at the idea of collaborating with the State Museum, with the Capitol, to create some really exciting exhibits in those spaces. So lots of work to be done, and I'll be talking to a lot of different folks over the coming months and starting to get a plan going for many years to come.
We can't wait, and welcome aboard. It's good to have you sitting in with our committee. And thanks again, Treasurer Meyer. Good thoughts. Please proceed, you guys. Thank you.
So lots of momentum on package 1 and 2, and now we are bringing back up package 3 and 4. So we had, that was kind of the focus of last month's meeting, was to re-kick off package 3. So we are in engineering, content, UI, UX on packages 3, all the digital exhibits, and then package 4, which really focuses mostly on civics. We've got a lot of good meetings on that, and we'll talk a little bit about civics today. When we talked through package 3 last time, the digital exhibits, we did say that we were still working on the taking what has all the great decisions that have been made, all the hard work in terms of design principles and elements, and what that does when it translates over to digital. So working with your core team on all of that, on what that style guide looks like, what those colors look like, to make sure that they are matching or complementary to what's already out there. The typography so that they are digital friendly, and applying all of that in terms of buttons and visuals and pictures that we use. So all of that continues to move forward. So it should feel very cohesive and as one family. So you'll see more and more of that as it comes through officially, but just want to make sure you guys saw some of the work that's happening behind the scenes. Nigel was able to say a lot that's going on with package 2, a lot's happening with package 3 as well, as we continue to move that forward. Okay, any questions before I go into the civics lab update? Keep trucking through, yeah, okay. So we had, I think it's been a while since we discussed the civics lab as a subcommittee group. And the last time that we met, I think we heard feedback that it was a little too complex, but that all of the messaging was correct and that the themes and intent were correct, but we're a little too, there's just a little too much there. So we took that feedback and we did a little bit of a reset. We did a lot of learning sessions between the NCSL, Department of Education, trying to remember everybody that was involved. Been very appreciative to everybody's efforts and making sure that we're all aligned, especially DI. We definitely got our Civics 101. My high school and junior high teachers would not be happy that I had to redo it, but I redid it. Feeling better about my civics knowledge now. And really took a look at, let's make sure that we're talking to the right people. So our primary audience for this are grades 5 through 12. We know younger will be there. We know adults will be there as well, but that's really the sweet spot. And I think what we were going with before was this assumption that this civics lab would be an addition to what they already are learning in their curriculum. But we realize that may not necessarily be the case, that some of those curriculums are changing. So this may be the first time that they see it. They may not have that base knowledge. So between the feedback that we heard and some of the insights that we had, we just really went with this theme of simplify. Let's make sure that we get to the core things that they need to know that we want them to come out of this experience with. So that's what we've done in the last several months since we've met. We've got education simplified. And we know that when we try to make things simpler, that's not always easy. That takes a lot of work to really get things honed down to what those core messages are. So we are going to walk you through what those core messages are and how that still applies to what you've seen before, what you approved before in terms of what those messages were per wall. And we gave ourselves some guardrails. So in addition to simplify, is this Civics 101? Are we talking entry level, or is this particular message master's class in civics? So we just try to give ourselves that guardrail. Wanted to make sure that we showed what was unique in Wyoming in terms of that civic knowledge. Is there something a little bit different that Wyoming does than other states or the nation? And then really focusing on the role of the citizen, because our one thing with this entire exhibit is to focus on the role of the citizen and that you are important, that this government only works when you are a part of it. We also wanted to make sure we got our, did a little bit of research in terms of other experiences that are out there. And DI creates a lot of experiences. We haven't necessarily created one around civics knowledge. We were able to go to DC and the Smithsonian. We were able to see the US Constitution exhibit. And it was really only about a minute long. There was minimal interaction. There was about 5 main decision points. It was really simplified, which was great. So that really hit that any sort of level, but that sweet spot of 5th through 12th. It got the point across. You were able to reinforce the point with repetition, but it wasn't overwhelming.
Rachel, where was the Constitution back there?
I'm trying to remember, I did it a year ago. I'm trying to remember which floor it was, but it's kind of hidden.
Yeah, I've been back, it's been since like 1980, so I haven't been back there in a long time, and I was curious.
Yeah.
Has anybody else visited the United States Constitution? Whereabouts was it? Is it?
Well, this was the only part of the exhibit, or this is the only part of the US History Museum that had the Constitution exhibit. So this little exhibit was it. The actual Constitution is not here.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
It's its own building,
Yeah.
pretty much.
Yeah. Okay.
Was also lucky enough to be able to tour, I got a private tour of the Colorado Judicial Learning Center. It is a very thorough experience. And if you haven't had a chance to go, it is wonderful. When we're thinking about it in terms of what our audience is, though, there are some really great learnings in terms of how they interact and the attention spans. So some interactions took 15 minutes to get through the whole thing. They were trying to show that full judicial process, which is fascinating, and love the idea of having multiple people be able to play different roles to get that engagement. And the kids, he said, really liked that as well. There were a couple interactions that allowed you to go against a partner or go against a couple different students and your peers. And those things got the highest level of engagement, but after about 2 or 3 minutes, they were out. So they did not get the full experience. They were just getting just the start of it, just scratching the surface. So those are things that we want to take into account too, that's why we went with simplification kind of as our overall theme, is we want to be able to hit the highlights, keep it entertaining as well as educational. So we call that edutainment, in order to keep that attention span there and focus there. And I think our education department team members also were really helpful in that as well. So our one thing for the civics lab is this is your government. The most important title is citizen. So it's open. We talked about this building. This building is open. It's people's house. We want you to know this is people's government. This is your government. You have a role to play in it. So as I go through each section, we try to narrow every section down to what's the one thing. If they only got one thing out of this section, what is it? And we want that all to ladder up. And we look at it from the full end-to-end experience. So we know there's pre-visit coordination that happens in terms of setting expectations all the way to after they leave. But so pre-visit, they are working on working with the team here on coordination of when they are coming. And then we looked at once they get here in that arrival sequence. So how can we start to pique their curiosity as soon as they get in here? So looking at the stairwell and the hallway as they come down this hallway here, they'll enter in here to really set those expectations for the day before they would go into the civics lab or split up and do the Capitol tour. Then they would come back in here, regroup, and then head back to their schools. And then of course, there could be additional lesson plans and collateral that could happen afterwards as well. So our one thing for the entrance path was welcome and pique their curiosity. Some might be excited, some might be bored already, or depending on what age they are. So we want to pique their curiosity, but let them feel that they're welcome here. This is a place that they should be. And then once they get into the Capitol classroom, continue to set those expectations through how the docent is working with the classroom, with the teachers, but we want the graphics to reinforce that role of citizen. So start to tell them what we're about to tell them. Once they get into the civics lab, we talked about having different stations and then the central station. That central station is really where we want the Constitution to shine. So we're utilizing the Constitution exhibit that we also talked about in the Supreme Historic Court. That same exhibit interaction will be there, but we'll be able to tailor it a little bit more in terms of the copy for this particular audience. So we want this station to really set up the entire experience, what the intent is, what we're trying to do, what that foundation is, And then the backside will have the Constitution. And we also want to explain this idea of the passports, because at each station they will be able to stamp a passport and how that becomes an additive experience. So this sets it up. They don't necessarily have to go in this order, but I'm gonna do it as if it's a linear process. They can go in different orders. So the legislative branch, everything in bold here is that one thing. So as simple as possible, the legislative branch drafts and passes legislation. And then main points under that we'll hit on. And the main points that we have in here, this will be a mix of graphic panels, template or copy panels, as well as interactives. And interactives, I mean, don't necessarily mean digital. It's something that they can touch, feel, play with. Again, kind of a gamification of sorts to help reinforce the messaging. So those main points will be what the legislative branch does, how they interact, what is a citizen legislature, what does that look like in Wyoming, what are committees, how voting is informed, and then their role as citizen in terms of voting and communicating.
I love the committees being the homework of the legislative branch.
Yeah, we got that from, yeah. That's language that the NCSL had, and we really liked that. Yeah. We are definitely drafting off of their years of communication in this way. The executive branch executes and enforces laws. I feel like I'm teaching. You guys all know it's way better than I can. So maybe I won't go into any more depth than that. But the roles and responsibilities of those 5 elected positions, the agencies that do help actualize those laws, what those services are, and then the careers available, because there's so many different ways that the citizen can get involved in government without being an elected official. So talk about how you vote for that and those agencies that you depend on. The judicial branch, everybody, interprets the law. So we talk about the roles and responsibilities there. And really, this is a smaller portion of it because we are wanting people to go over to the Judicial Learning Center. So in the Supreme Court. So we'll talk about the role of citizen and how they vote on retention of those judges. Then we get into checks and balances. So saying that, key principle of the American government is that it functions best when the powers are not all concentrated and there's not a single authority, but it's divided into branches. So we talk about how that works and give examples of that. This last section maybe has the biggest change since the last time we talked. We get really positions this around public policy and trying to educate what public policy is. You say that is not a 101 thing. And really the intent of that section was how to teach people how they can get involved and how important it is to be an active citizen. So we flipped it and said, let's embrace that. And let's really use this opportunity to talk about different levels of government, state, local, tribal, national, and the varying ways that the government can impact how they get involved. So all of this really coming to a summary that they would then get at the passport station where they've gotten their different passports at each of those stations. And this really becomes this collective summary of the experience and the call to action, like the power of intentional thinking. So asking them, what will you, I don't know why it says committee, it meant commit. What will you commit to do to be active? And maybe some thought-provoking questions that can lead into the collateral materials and lesson plans that the teachers can still use. Okay. So now that I've done my 101 with the most educated group here, so what's next for DI is that we're taking this and applying this to the concepts. So some of the concepts that we showed previously might still work for some that need a little enhancement. And we will be coming back in November to show you those concepts and how they came to life with this new simplified messaging. DI team, did I miss anything?
I don't think so. I think that's great. Good overview.
Thanks, Nigel. Any questions or thoughts?
Mitty, what do you think? Are we on track? I think it looks pretty good. I hope it will be valuable like I think it will be. You're right, Rachel. I think the challenge always is to keep the attention and, but this is important stuff. And I'm glad Wyoming is addressing it in this way. And because it's a nationwide thing, as we all know. People are talking about civics and how we don't know our government very well, so it's good.
Yeah, we wanted to make this very attainable for everyone, and so that this simplification, I think, will help with that. Okay. Move on to digital activations update. So we are going to focus on portraits of history. So if you recall, portraits of history, we talked about this in last month's meeting and reviewed what those three stories, and selected what the three main stories would be around cattle, adventurers, and early mining. We have taken those stories. Historical Society, who's not able to be on the call today, but have done a great amount of research and getting us additional details and imagery around each of these stories. We wanted to show you how we want to bring those to life. As you know, there's a handful of people that come here are lucky enough to be here every month, but behind the scenes, there are, 240 people at DI that are eventually going to touch this project in some way, shape, or form. One of them is Chris Jones. I've worked with Chris Jones for several years. He's a very talented associate creative director for content, messaging, and storytelling. So Chris is going to walk us through how we intend to bring portraits of history to life. So with, I'll let Chris go to it. Sorry. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Rachel. Hey, everybody. Nice to meet you all and excited to be working on this. And so, we want to walk you through what we're thinking for this Portraits of History activation. We know we're going to be working with all this beautiful archival imagery. And so we're looking for ways to really bring it to life and make something that's a little bit more than just a slideshow of all this photography and artwork and everything. So we're going to show you some techniques that we're going to use. We'll get into it in a minute, but one of the main techniques we're going to use on this is commonly referred to as the Ken Burns technique. If you're familiar with that, where you're basically taking still static imagery and kind of panning and zooming across it, making it look like it's almost like video. And so we're going to use that and a few other techniques to bring this beautiful archival imagery to life. And so, we know that there are going to be 3 stories told in this activation. There's going to be one dedicated to cattle, one to adventurers like Billy Owen, and then one is going to tell the story of the history of mining in Wyoming. And so each screen will be dedicated to one of these stories. And to walk you through a little bit about how the user experience is going to work, each screen will function in the same way. And the experience can be broken down into 3 main components. So when someone walks into the vault and sees these 3 screens, there's going to be a singular image playing on each one. And each image is going to be representing whatever that story is. And so that image, what we're calling it the idle state loop. And so it's going to be this image that we're going to basically break apart into different layers and put it basically into 3D space and give it that Ken Burns effect, but really give it a little bit of an extra touch and make it really, really dynamic and robust, kind of attracting people to come up to the screen to see if they can learn more and see if they can, if they want to get a closer peek at it. So that will be called the idle state loop. And so then as a visitor approaches it, there's going to be some kind of a transition, and we'll show you some examples of what we're thinking about for that transition. But that transition will then take you into this primary video show, which we're thinking is going to be about 90 seconds long. It will have a voiceover, and it will be the main story that's going to use all of this archival imagery as the visuals. And so to look at the idle state loop a little bit more in depth, you can see over there on the right, that's just an example, reference example that we found that we liked, that is kind of the type of style and the level of robustness that we're looking to achieve for each one of these idle state loops. So you can see that they took this still photograph and they basically cut it apart, separating all these layers and putting them all into 3D space so they can kind of do this nice little, panning and zooming, making all these elements look as if it's a camera, moving through this space. And so for each of these select images for each screen, that's what we're intending on doing, and that will be what's playing on screen as someone walks into the vault, and hopefully attracts them to come up to the screen and learn more. Any questions so far?
Questions,
All good.
committee? Does everybody think that's as cool as I do? The answer is yes.
Okay. Okay, and so then yet looking at the transition a little bit closer, when someone walks up to it, it's going to take you from that idle state loop into the video. And there are a few different ways we can do that. And so you can see some examples down here at the bottom. The first one is this nice organic ink transition where this ink just kind of expands to reveal this new image on top of the other one. So that's just kind of this, with the first example that we're thinking of, that's just a really nice, easy way to take them into the story. And then that second one, that's just a combination of a blur and a fade, another just really simple technique that, you know, does a lot of work, but isn't, you know, overwhelming or anything. And that's, you know, another simple way to get you from that idle state transition or idle state loop into the main video. And this third idea, this could be kind of custom made for each different story. And so whatever that idle state image is, the idea would be to take some element in that image that relates to the story, and then use it as kind of this visual element to take you into the video. And so, for instance, with this one, with the Potter's Bowl image, we could zoom in on one of those bullet holes and use that bullet hole shape as almost like a window to reveal the video behind it. And so the idea would be, you know, we would get more into this in storyboarding, but we could look at taking an element in each one of those images and making kind of this like really nice custom transition. It's a little bit more complex, but could be a really interesting way to make that transition. Any questions on that?
Questions, committee? Jump right in. You know.
Okay.
Good stuff.
Okay, great. And so then, yeah, once we get into that primary video show, we're looking at taking all of that archival imagery and doing a little bit more of that Ken Burns effect that I mentioned. And we can do a little bit of that same type of treatment that we're going to be doing in the idle state loop, just a little bit more simpler. You know, we could try to focus on just maybe a singular element in each image, break that apart, and maybe separate it from the background to give it some of this nice motion that you see here in these examples on the right. But we would look to do that for each archival image that we're using. And then as far as adding some additional visual elements and treatments, you know, we might want to think about helping push these stories with a little bit more information. You know, there is going to be a voiceover that's walking you through everything, but in certain cases, it might be nice to have a little bit of type on screen showing, you know, maybe what year it is, or calling out a specific person in an image, or adding little descriptors, things like that. And so for doing this, we would really lean into the existing design system. You know, Rachel walked you through that digital style guide earlier. We would really lean on that to guide us in how we're putting these extra little graphics and call outs in there. But these could be some nice little elements that we could add to help push the story and add a little bit more information. And then going a little bit further with some more visual elements and treatments, you know, we want to try to maybe see if we can break up some of this archival imagery with some extra visuals. And so one of the things we were thinking was doing these little map animations, even if we're just, you know, putting them in a place where maybe we're showing where a certain city is on a map, or we had the idea of maybe tracing Billy Owen's bicycle route through Yellowstone, little things like that could be really nice touches with these map animations. We would love to do a few of those maybe in each story to, help tell the geography part of the story. And like I said, put people kind of in the right place. And then we know that some of this archival imagery may not be big enough, or just may not have the right layout or something for full screen presentation. And so we might look for other ways to incorporate that imagery. One of the ways we see here is almost putting it in like a physical space, like it's in a photo album. But again, leaning into that existing design system, and treating photos in certain ways like that. If we're not doing that Ken Burns parallax effect, this could be another way to still incorporate that imagery and keep it in there. And then for that last one, on the right, in certain cases, we may not have the exact right imagery to support portions of the stories. And so maybe we might just need to evoke the right feeling or mood with a background image, and using a type treatment on top of that. Again, we would use the existing design system and those elements, the same typefaces and everything for those type treatments. But then for that background image, using certain crops of images, or even potentially using stock every once in a while, as long as it fit the right mood and feeling that we're trying to convey through the story. Does that all make sense?
Lots of head nods here.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic.
Oh, okay, great. And so then looking at those idle state images, we're starting to look at which images might be the best ones to use for those really nice, robust animations that we're going to do. These were the ones that we wanted to present to you to see if you had a feeling for which ones might work best. We wanted to try to narrow it down as best we could. And so this is not something we need an answer on right now, but wanted to put this in front of you to gauge any initial reactions, and maybe let you sit with these to make a determination on which one is going to be best for that attract state for when people walk into the vault and see these images on screen.
So these are the ones that are rising to the top as we work on the final story and all of the images with the core team. It's been awesome collaboration between the museum and archives and historical society and our creative team. So as that all comes together, we'll be able to have a better idea of which one we feel like rises to the top, get core team approval on that as we move forward. But these are the ones that we're liking right now.
So I think the key is we need to know what the subject matters are and the individuals involved, because once you have it, we won't have much input after you're done. So I think we need a breakdown of what the topic is, what the person's involved, and what it's going to look like.
Yep. So as we're writing that outline, I'll go ahead and go to next step. So as we're writing the overall outline and gathering all the photos together and kind of piecing that together, we'll be working on getting that approved. And then we'll also come back in November and December for the script and storyboard. So that'll be a process. And so we'll see what images go with what lines and the stories before we get into editorial, before we get into rough cuts and final cuts. So that process will be.
For example, nobody really knows who Billy Owen is. And we don't, he's not, why would he be a key figure in something like this when no one knows who he is? And when he left the state right after he was the superintendent. So I just want to make sure we use the key figures as opposed to ones that are not.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we talked about them when we talked about them last month. I think we called them colorful characters. And I'm trying to remember all the names, and Historical Society isn't able to be on the call today, but it was Billy Owens and several others, and really highlighting their adventures through the state, which is another way to try to get show different places within the state too. So yeah, we'll make sure that we have those outlined very clearly so that everybody feels confident that those are the right people and the right stories in there.
Yes, I just wonder about, Jim Bridger. You got Bridger National Forest or Wilderness Area named after him. And John C. Fremont, who was, essentially a mountain man and somebody that stayed around and did something for the state. So, there's some other, I guess I would say, colorful characters, Wild Bill Cody or whatever. you know, there's a lot of colorful characters that people are know more about. Not to say that Billy Owen didn't do quite a little bit in the surveying and different things that he did for the state. But you know, this is gonna be, it's not gonna be a static picture, so it's gonna be interactive. So I guess when we're looking at these things that, yeah, probably give us an idea about so these things don't get stale. You know, some of these other characters that are definitely colorful, definitely have a long lasting impact, you know.
Yeah, I think the idea of creating a library to make sure that these, you know, we've got 3 stories for day 1, and then what does that look like after? To highlight those additional stories, I think is great.
Yeah, I think the treasurer really hits on something that's in the back of my mind. I grew up over in the western part of the state and in a community that celebrates those 1830s. And that's when Kit Carson and Jim Bridger and Jedediah Smith and all of those colorful early adventurers who came across the country, many of them had a big impact on Wyoming. And so at that time it was the Wyoming Territory. But I think that second category, gosh, there's just all kinds of potential for that one.
Yeah.
So good points made.
Yeah, you look at, you know, some of the historical trails, the Texas Trail and the cattle trails that came through, the Mormon Trail, you know, Independence Rock and all those people going to Washington and Oregon. You know, that's kind of almost like a James Michener story. You know, I think he probably wrote about some of those people. I think in Centennial, he brought in some of the same things that in Wyoming, as far as the different Indian forts and different things that yeah, I can recall a few years ago, they had I think it was a 100-year anniversary of the signing of the Sioux Nations Treaty at Fort Laramie. And they had every Sioux tribe show up and attend that. And it was really an interesting aspect that you saw in that historical, the Indian nation of Sioux that came from, you know, I don't know how many states. I think they had 40 tribal members right at horseback from Minnesota, because there was a Sioux Nation there. And he didn't have a lot good to say about how that people are treated, you know, I guess mistreated and you know, there wasn't a treaty that I think that we ever actually didn't break. You know, and that's kind of an aspect that it's not I guess a warm and fuzzy aspect, but it's part of our history, you know.
Yeah, state of Wyoming is definitely not missing
Sure.
any sort of stories for sure.
Yeah, we don't want that lack for opportunity. And Chris, I think everybody just gauging the room, I think everybody's excited about all of the things that you outlined this morning, the potential for holding the attention of folks and giving them more of the Wyoming story. I just think, as the treasurer points out, there's just a treasure trove of all kinds of things that you can tap into.
Yeah, for sure. I think, you know, we've talked about this conceptually for a while. So now we're getting into style and approach. We'll get into the details of the story points and every single image that goes with it to get into the script. So you're seeing part of the process. Yes, you guys are definitely do that to be able to see and make decisions. So that'll be coming next.
Go clear back to Lewis and Clark, sure.
Yeah.
If you across there too.
Yeah.
And by the way, I really appreciate it. We get professionals in the room who can play and have played a big role, and I certainly trust, you know, where you guys come from on that. So I look forward to this. It's gonna be a real highlight, I think, this ballroom.
And Mr. Chairman, I do want to clarify, just so that the expectations are kind of set. when DI is mentioning that they will come back with images and a storyline, that will be based on your last meeting where you selected these 3 stories. And so unfortunately, or I guess we could have the discussion, if you don't now at this meeting think those are the 3 stories for the initial install, DI would need to have Wyoming Historical Society kind of go back and start over. I think the wonderful thing about this is we could have 38 stories and it's scalable. So based on the last meeting, the reason DI was kind of driving you to select a story was because you can see the work that Chris's group has done to date. That marries up with WHS's research. So they've already started finding the archival images, and those are what Chris's team are using. So I guess I'd kind of ask DI and the subcommittee, if you are concerned that these aren't the right stories, DI probably needs to know that ASAP, because they are proceeding with the research WHS, Wyoming Historical Society, has done in the last month to give those materials to Chris. That doesn't mean there couldn't be more stories in the future. This committee has talked about additional scope with some other funds that you have available to you, but DI would need to know ASAP if these are no longer the stories you want them to develop.
Well, I would say, cause you're down this road, this one, you know, would probably work for the first one, but I would say that maybe the next one would be, you know, the frontiersmen of and before Wyoming was a territory type of a scenario. And so I would say it maybe not just do on one person, maybe just have the story be about Wyoming before it was a territory. And the people that made it, you know, you can go clear back to the Louisiana Purchase on that, you know, and maybe even before, because I don't know if the Spaniards were here or not, or how far north they got, but you know, I mean, just say you're from the indigenous people to where they roamed the prairies until we were a territory. That's a time period that's rich with a lot of history and a lot of individuals that basically continued on into the current day's history. So, you know, and I think that would be kind of have the Historical Society and whoever else is in the project to move forward with that type of a perspective.
Madam Co-Chairman, you had a comment.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think we could easily come up with probably 60 to 100 names today of people and sort of, you know, argue over which one's best, and they probably all be good is the problem, but where Historical Society, based on their knowledge of what's in Casino and based on their knowledge of what's available, you know, they put forward this first slate of options, and we had a pretty robust discussion last month. So I agree that this is something where maybe we add in the future, and also see what the uptake of some of these, you know, if everybody looks at the Potter's Bowl story and nobody looks at the mining story, well, we'll take that into consideration. But I think changing the storyline at this point, but, you know, kind of sends us in the backward direction.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Co-Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I think one of the cool things about the way this is gonna work is Billy Owen maybe not the most recognizable name. We're not needing a name as the hook, right? It's the image that is that hook that's gonna pull people.
Yes.
Right? And so I think he has a compelling story, and Historical Society has done a great job of building those compelling stories out. And so and we've been working with DI and everyone to find that image that is gonna be the thing that makes somebody want to come up and then learn what that content is. So I think that's a nice thing about this activation, is it really comes down to finding that really compelling image to people.
Yeah.
Thinking about him riding that unicycle through Yellowstone.
Right,
It's
yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, well, thank you, Wendy, for that caution, and I appreciate all the comments on this. There's so many opportunities going forward. This is a great place to start. I didn't know much about Owen before we had that conversation a month ago, so it's good stuff, but please proceed. Chris, anything further, or Rachel, what?
No, that's it. I think, yeah, we wanted to make sure that we were headed in the right direction in terms of visual style and approach, and it sounds like we are. We will get more specific details around each of these and work with the core team on really getting the idle state selects moving forward and all the rest of the imagery. And we'll also work, I think, on possibilities of what the next day 2, day 3, day 4, and obviously that's something that you guys will be involved in as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, terrific. Because,
As you can see, there's a lot of people passionate about your stories as well. They just don't get the chance to hear each month. So thank you, Chris. Thank you, Nigel.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
yeah, thank you, Chris.
So those were
Of
the
course.
days we were gonna do a walk and talk about the statues but those are the things that we had to share in this room today.
Okay, so maybe, I think we're well on track with the agenda. In fact, a little bit ahead. We could take a quick break for about 10 minutes and then come back and do a little walk, at least down the extension. Is that what the idea is, Rachel? That sounds great. And how does that sound, Madam Co-Chairman?
I think it sounds fine. I'm wondering if we don't go ahead and do acoustics and public comment, so we don't have to formally reconvene, but I'm good either way. I'm
That's a
not
great
time-limited.
suggestion. Does that get a thumbs up from everybody? We can move on through the agenda and then if DI can hang tough, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, before we leave the topic of DI, I just want to remind everybody of what's to come between now and our next meeting. So you will be receiving a file stage link to review the content for the half wall panels and the PMRs that talk about the math and things to do in each specific region. That was highlighted earlier in the meeting today. Nathan and Kevin. I just wanted to put that a bug in your ear to look for your email on you need to review that. So that will be coming between now and the November meeting. So that's going to be your homework between now and then that will tie a bow nicely on kind of the remaining content for package 2 that will be installed before the end of the year. So that's coming. I just wanted to remind you to pay attention to that file stage when it comes. That will be your opportunity to review. Did I miss anything else that's coming?
And I believe it will be all the remaining extension content that will be coming for your review. So there's a panel you might recall outside of the media center about the media. There is some welcome panels down in the extension that explain how all these rooms work together down there. So basically it ties every piece of static exhibit material in the extension up as part of this final install in by the end of the year.
And Wendy and Madam, Mr. Chairman, it's also the Capitol Auditorium content. So you've already approved the imagery at the last meeting. So now this is the content, and we are continuing to work with the game and fish that we have the right species and those kind of details. So that's just something that will come to you in this kind of in-between phase between this meeting and the next one. So we don't want to catch you off guard, but just to look for your email. It's everything you've already approved and seen. It's just the final content.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you both. Committee, any questions of Wendy or Brianna about process and what we anticipate before the next meeting? We do want to make sure to weigh in on file stage in the next couple of days. Let's move into the digital acoustics update, if we could.
And Mr. Chairman,
Brandon couldn't be here, so
yeah, Brandon had other state building projects that he had to work on today. And Suzanne is on, but I believe the brief update is that the Construction Management Division has been working with Trainer on the next change order for design. And I believe that Trainer will be teed up to present to you at your November meeting. I think is the long and short of it, but I don't know if Suzanne has any additional details.
yeah, I think Brandon had to be in Brock Springs today, so it would be helpful, I think, by November though, to get a good look at where we've been, where we're gonna go, what have we gotten accomplished so far? And I'm sure the committee will be interested as I am to make sure that we know how much we've been able to accomplish.
Yeah.
So,
Question, Chairman. You know, I guess, assuming that we might want to rethink and try to do more acoustics than the acoustics. Because I'm just thinking of the potential of actually getting more money to work on acoustic stuff, in the, you know, immediate and the foreseeable future here for a while. Have a budget to where we can look at it and actually, rather than doing pilot projects, actually do a more comprehensive acoustical solution.
I think that's a great conversation that we can have next month.
We need to have, yeah, we just need to figure out what we got left in the budget and see, you know, because I think that, I think the science is there. I think the contractors are there. I think that it might be that we have to maybe broaden our scope from rather than pilot project on some things to an action comprehensive project.
Yeah, thanks for that, Treasurer.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead,
Suzanne did just send me an update that, yes, trainers change order is finalized and they are drawing as we speak. You might recall earlier this year, you did release them, Mr. Treasurer, to your point, for a more robust full design. And then based on that design, you can decide with funds available or to seek additional funds, how much of that
We
scope you
still
would
have
like to do.
time to add to some of these things, but we'll have the whole layout.
Exactly, and trainer at your November meeting will give you an update on where they are at in drawing, but they are released and understand that direction of a comprehensive package. And then it will be up to your subcommittee to decide, one, with funds already appropriated, or two, with any additional funding you might wish to seek, what could be done with that scope.
Yeah, and hopefully we can have a good understanding of what ground we have made up on the acoustic front. Just curious about that. So, okay, so that we'll look forward to that report next month. Let's go to public comment.
Putting it on the ceiling is.
I don't know if we have anybody streaming in, Tanner, at all out there in the world. And it doesn't look like we have any public comment in this room, so we'll close public comment. We are to the end of the meeting. Final thoughts, because as we break up today and do a little walk, that'll be it for today. So Hannah, any other items for the good of the cause?
No, Mr. Chairman, just as a reminder, your next two meetings, November 14th and December 17th, will be big lists with packages 3 to 4, and then more kind of show and tell with packages 1 and 2 of those meetings. Oh, and acoustics is when you lots still to do the remaining part of the year.
Sounds good. Wendy, any final thoughts?
Mr. Chairman, I think just I think the November and December meetings will be very important because some of you will be going off to session and others of you will be busy with legislators here. So we'll want to try to really work with DI on knocking out as much as we can so that your staff can continue to work with DI while you may be unavailable during the session.
Yeah, it gets a little busy. Representatives, Representative Nicholas, any thoughts for the finality of the meeting here this morning? You good? I'm good. Okay. Representative Sherwood, anything?
Good and grateful.
Okay, good deal. Thank you, everybody. We will close the meeting. And let's take a little walk around the facility for those who'd like to do that.